I grew up at a time at a place where there wasn't a lot of art around, but I was really, primarily drawn into music. But I've done other kinds of creative work as well. But that's really where it all started. It was just me listening to the radio, talking to friends, and trying to figure out, like, could I do this?
Stop waiting for the moment to make it. It's always this never-ending chase of the next big thing, like the next big project, the next big client, the next amount of likes.
The word is perseverance. If you can't take, if you can't take rejection, don't even attempt to get involved in this business.
When it's your passion, you have to anticipate that people will not be on board to the degree you would expect them to be on board.
Let your ego go. Let it go and just learn. It's a lifelong decision. It's not, I'm going to act, direct, and write. This is a lifelong decision. And you got to learn every single day.
I'm a writer, creator, producer, director, author, and community champion. But that's not how the story started. I faced rejections more times than I could count and found support in the most surprising places. Scrap paper is where I make sense of it all. The scraps, the stories, and the strength behind the journey.
I'm going to jump into actually what we're here for, to talk to you about your journey as a creative, what has inspired you as an actor, as a stage performer, and what that creative process has been like. So jump right in and tell us how you got started acting.
Well, early on, my life was basically sports. I was a big jock, but always interested watching the old movies, with Robert Mitchum and those guys, in black and white movies. I'm showing my age. But anyway, I still watch it on Turner Classics. Then I progressed into teaching and coaching. And I think teaching and coaching really had a lot to do with my development as an actor, because you're always performing as a teacher, as a coach, to some degree. And then that brought me into acting. And I had this interest, and I started doing things like little things around, as a jock or as a guy in sports, it was frowned upon if you went into the theater, if you went, for obvious reasons. But anyway, I took some small little parts in school and in college, and I was doing some MC jobs, like master of ceremonies and this and that. And I got up enough guts, I guess, to do a couple of little stage things when I was in college. And that's really what started it, and I went from there to doing some small theater productions and small film productions. And it's all gradually. I was married at the time, so it was difficult. I got married, fast forward, I went through college and got married. And of course, she's been divorced a long time. But I had to slow down when I had a couple of kids. But it still continued, and I was doing some films, nothing spectacular. And then The Sopranos came along. I got involved with The Sopranos, and ever since then, it's been like gangbusters. And it certainly helped me. It certainly helped me a lot. But to this day, there's a cult of people that just go crazy over The Sopranos. They know every character, I did about a dozen episodes, and I walk into a restaurant sometimes and somebody will say, "Hey, Burt, how you doing?" They don't even know my name. They call me by my character. But it's been a progression, and it went from, once again, from like in sports, you were focused and you had to have a discipline, participating in sports, and then same thing, it just progressed, and it helped me in auditioning and that kind of thing.
And now a brief word from our sponsors.
Looking for a hit of nostalgia? Starling Avenue Cards and Comics has you covered. From vintage sports cards to legendary comics, it's a treasure trove for collectors and curious minds alike. Proud to sponsor Scrap Paper, where creative stories come to life, because every great collection and every great creator starts with a spark. Stop by Starling Avenue and find yours. Scrap Paper is all about exploring ideas and pushing boundaries, and so is our sponsor, Epiphany Resources. Success isn't just about knowing what to do, it's about having the clarity and resilience to do it. Epiphany Resources helps leaders and business owners break through the obstacles, and grow into their full potential through coaching, mentoring, and speaking. If you're ready to take the next step, visit epiphanyresourcesllc.com.
And now back to Scrap Paper with Natalie K. Hodge.
I love that this wasn't a part of your original vision for yourself, but something that you were just kind of exploring on a hobby level, and then it progressed over time. What's something you tried that didn't work, but led you to doing what you do now?
I think you remember it. Well, I remember Mourning on Charlotte Street. I don't know if you remember that. There was a production. Oh yes, how can you forget?
This is where we met.
That was disappointing. I mean, that was a project that, as to this day, has never gotten done, and I was really disappointed. That the subject matter was great, and it would have been a great film, but for a couple of reasons, it just never got done. And another disappointing thing is I befriended Danny Aiello, who was a great actor, and I was very friendly with him. I used to see him like once a week in New York and sit down and have dinner with him at this little club there, and his son was there, and both have passed away. I mean, that's a whole sad story, the Aiello family. I mean, Danny, he had lost a son at age 50 who was a stunt coordinator, and he passed away. Danny passed away, and his son passed away, all from pancreatic cancer. But he wanted me to play a role and he was going to direct the play, Those the River Keeps, the David Rabe play. And he asked me and his son to play the two roles of the two males, and there were two girls. And I was like flabbergasted. He's asking, here's Danny Aiello. He could ask anybody in the world, So I said, okay. I said, why not? So I would meet at his house or his son's house, maybe 3 days a week, going over the lines. And David Rabe kind of talked in riddles. He would say something like, hey, Artie, remember the time we did this together? Remember that time we did this together, me and you? You remember that time? Don't you remember that time? That's how you had to learn it that way. So I progressed to go, I proceeded to do like 50 pages of memorization, and then he decided not to do it. He, for whatever reason, he wanted to do a one-man show of Capone on Broadway. So that was a major disappointment. So those are two disappointing things. But from that, you learn and you go on.
Speaking of lessons, can you share any other lessons that have really been impactful on your journey?
Yeah, well, I mean, lessons you learn, you don't burn any bridges, that's for sure in this business. That's one lesson that everybody should follow. And, I'm one of those believe it when you see it type persons. You learn, don't get so excited about somebody presenting an idea to you. I was always try to be professional and cordial and thank you very much. And I would always, in a nice way, ask, the question, how's your funding doing? Rather than saying you got the money. Some guys say you got the money. I said, how's your funding doing? And they would always say, a gesture of saying, we're this close. We're this close. And we're waiting for some money from India or from China or wherever it might be. And of course, 90% of the time it doesn't occur. But that's a lesson to be learned, I think. Don't be so excited. You're excited that you're being asked, but don't go overboard and think or tell anybody that you get this job or you're going to get this job. That would be definitely a lesson learned,
Yeah, we've had many of those conversations. Getting into producing, and you're always so very kind in your delivery of like, essentially don't be Pollyanna out here. So I really appreciate that. Who or what keeps your ideas, projects, or even your life together? What's holding all the pieces together for you?
Well, not to be too sentimental, but I'd say, you mean in acting or just in general? In general, yeah. Well, the man upstairs has been helping me out. I'd say God, right? Like many people say, God, family. I got 6 grandkids, so they take a top priority, a big priority in my life. And good health. If you can keep those things together. And my family is not too far from me, so I see them quite often. to show you how I've aged, I got 3 grandkids in college.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. Wow. So I would say that's what keeps my life together, you know, my family, really. And as long as I have good health, and they're very supportive of me. My mother passed away at age 95 a couple of years ago. And she was always like so proud of her son, you know. How's my son, the actor? I don't like it when they murder. Why do you have to be murdered? You know, why do you have to be? But she would brag to her friends, oh, my son's a big actor, you know. But anyway, that relationship was a special relationship, always will be. But I'd say family. Family keeps me together. You know, even the acting family, you know, although that's kind of superficial at times.
And now a brief word from our sponsors.
Everyone deserves support. Whether you're facing a mental health challenge, struggling with addiction, or just need someone to listen, Piedmont Community Services is here for you. They provide expert counseling and recovery programs to help individuals and families thrive, because a stronger, healthier community starts with you. If you or someone you love needs support, visit piedmontcsb.info to learn more. Help is here. You are not alone. Scrap Paper is all about exploring new ideas, and so is our sponsor, Epiphany Resources. If you're a leader or entrepreneur looking for clarity, purpose, and resilience, Epiphany Resources can help you turn your ideas into action. Through coaching and speaking, they help people grow beyond their current situation and navigate life's toughest challenges. Visit epiphanyresourcesllc.com to start your journey.
And now back to Scrap Paper with Natalie K. Hodge.
Yeah, but you know, that's one of the fond memories that I have about Mourning on Charlotte Street when we were on that set putting together the short film and that's the how we became friends, because it was such a great supportive environment. And I was very nervous as a script supervisor for that project because I'd never done that work before. I hadn't done anything behind the camera. And you were so cordial and so welcoming, and just whatever you could do to make me feel comfortable. And that was inspiring for me. And I felt like, based on that experience, I really had a shot at figuring out my place in the entertainment business. Because if I could meet 100 Arties, I was going to be in good shape. I haven't met another one yet, but
wow. Well, anyway, I guess we're all unique in some way, right?
Yeah,
but you've come a long way. Let me tell you, I follow you along. You know, I remember you had that apartment in Queens where the train used to go by, right? And when you went from Cornell to wherever, you bounced around here and there. And then you went out to what school? I don't know, Long Island. You were working there, right?
I worked at, good memory, Stony Brook University.
Stony Brook University, right?
To LA. I mean, it's been quite a journey, and I think that's the big lesson for me in this, how I know this is where I'm supposed to be, and all the highs and lows and all of the disappointments that have come along the way. I've continued to do it. And in Martinsville now, where there is no really film and television industry to speak of except for what we're creating here now.
Just to briefly explain what you're creating, give me exactly what you're doing.
So Rudy's Girl Media is my company. It's named after my parents. And what we're doing is creating short form content, film, television. This is our new podcast series. So we have our independent projects, and then we're also supporting other creatives in the community who are doing the same thing. So really trying to amplify spaces outside the lines of Hollywood, outside New York, Atlanta, some of the places that really have more established film and television industry. Like, we're creating that space here.
Okay, I'm still waiting for that invitation to be part of one of your films.
Well, listen, you are part of the podcast.
Okay. Well, I really compliment you. You've done great. You've done, what the word is. The word perseverance is always the word, and you certainly have shown some perseverance. And it's worked into your advantage to some success, of course. And it's my pleasure to be part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I have never forgotten the kindness that you showed me, the friendship that we had and continue to have. And so I'm just glad we have this moment to catch up and to talk about some of the things you have going on. So my next question is, what are some of the side projects or hustles you have taken on along the way to live out this dream?
Well, I mean, I got involved in a couple of businesses that didn't really do too well. Nothing big. I was a bartender. I would work on like weddings and special events, and I would schmooze people, and that kind of thing. I'd get a kick out of doing that. But I was like, not tending bar, but I was a bartender, not in a bar, but at different events for different things, and I could be a ham at times, I guess. So it didn't develop into anything great, But I actually made a couple of connections doing that with people that were in this movie industry, So as far as side hustles, I could have easily gotten involved in with a few wrong hustles, but I won't go into that. But no, I've gone pretty straight with all my hustle situations, and I wish I could elaborate more, but
yeah, we'll leave it right there.
Yeah.
So what advice would you give your younger self?
My younger self? Well, probably to be not to be too naive, to anything. And I was always kind of a street guy, which is quite different than my kids, because my kids are caught in this, suburban life and not really getting into the old neighborhood kind of situations, and you mature much quicker, I think, in that situation, in that sense. But I would have probably tried to, any money that I ever made, I would try to invest in something that conservative, and hopefully, well, you don't think that way. I don't think many people tend to think, it'll happen by itself. But I think looking back, if I was to do something over again, I would have invested in something that's conservative and that would be lasting into where I am now. But I guess that's probably what it would be.
In thinking about young actors or young hopefuls who are trying to get into this business, what advice would you give them, aside from investing and finding, a conservative space to kind of hold their money? What would you tell them as they're approaching this field?
Well, I would say, once again, the word is perseverance. If you can't take rejection, don't even attempt to get involved in this business. And you know that as well as anybody. People say, "Oh, I want to be an actor," and it's so easy now. You can make a film with a camera. Everybody thinks they can make movies, and it's very easy. Oh yeah, it's going to go on Netflix. Everybody thinks they're going to be going. I know a guy who knows a guy who has a connection with Netflix, and yeah, we're going to be doing this. We're going to be doing this. We're doing that. Don't be too naive. And once again, like I keep saying, perseverance, but that's the word that applies to all of this, I think. And if you really are interested, take classes, learn it. Don't just think that you're going to just jump up and become an actor overnight. It's a long road, and you might get lucky along the way. I mean, I really got lucky with the Sopranos, and to this day, I do a lot of events with the other guys, et cetera, et cetera. But stay focused at what you want to do. Most people have another job. Don't quit that job, but try to fit it in someplace, get involved in like small community theater, and certainly take some type of coaching from an acting teacher or a group. You can't just sit back and that's not going to just happen. You have to make it happen. And if you catch a break along the way, take advantage of that break. And as I said earlier, don't burn any bridges, because you never know. I just told somebody yesterday, I said, get backstage the magazine, get some headshots, and if they're looking for like background actors, that's what most people start as a background actor. Take advantage of that. Even student films. I said, I've done a number of student films early on. And it's amazing the equipment that these students have from Columbia or from NYU. They come with a crew of like 30 people, and they're very, very good at what they do. And get something as to start a little resume. But stay focused at what you want to do, and don't expect too much too soon. And you might get a break.
Yeah.
So
digging into one of your breaks that you've mentioned a few times, The Sopranos, and the relationship that you were able to form with James Gandolfini, and the type of person that he was. One of the most memorable moments that I can recall is when we were able to go backstage. James Gandolfini was doing a show on Broadway. I can't remember what the show was. And I got to meet him through you.
God of Carnage it was.
Right. Talk about how it was to be on set with him and the type of environment that he kind of cultivated on the Sopranos set.
Yeah, I'm sure you've heard this before, this whole family atmosphere, and it's true. And he was like, not because of his age or anything, but he was like the grandfather of this family. And he had a wonderful sense of humor. He could detect when things were going too slow or things were getting boring or whatever, and he would break the ice with a story of some kind. But he was always caring. He didn't care. I remember coming out of makeup one day. They were doing my hair, and I'm coming out, and he was sitting on a bench. And you always respected everybody's privacy when they were doing their lines to themselves. And he says, "Where are you going?" I said, I'm just going to leave you alone, He said, "No, come over here. The heck with that." He says, "How's your family? How are the grandkids?" And we'd go into this whole thing about family. But he was a wonderful, wonderful guy. And, there are stories going around about this and that. But people don't realize he was probably in almost every scene, not just episode. And here's a guy that's there at 6 o'clock in the morning, probably doing like who knows how many pages of memorization. Get out of there at 7 o'clock at night, maybe even later. I had so many bad habits as far as eating goes and sleeping goes. So he'd go home, maybe grab a bite to eat, and he'd have somebody read with him for the next day. So he's doing every day, doing I don't know how many pages of memorization. And whereas most of us just had maybe a scene here and a scene there and a scene there. But he endured, and he took a lot out of him, I think. And I think that contributed to his having a heart attack. Although your eating habits get all screwed up. If you watch the show, you can see how heavy everybody got as the year went on, because with all the money they had, you didn't have ham sandwiches and potato chips, You took a break, and you had choices of fish and all kinds of things. We were very spoiled. But he was a terrific guy. And his son's a nice guy. I might have been in his son's company a couple of times. Great guy.
Tell me about this chapter in your journey. What are you excited about, looking forward to? What are you creating now?
Well, I'm doing, as a matter of fact, I'm doing a reading tonight in New York for a potential movie. But I'm doing a lot of readings, some small projects. I'm 82 years old now. People say, "Get out of here, 82. Who are you kidding? What are you? How old are you? 61, 62? I said, "Look, you turn me inside out, I'm probably like 120. But I said, I'm 82 years old. Yes, I think I'm still a kid, and it's okay. What's wrong with that? If you don't like it, tough luck, But I got to be realistic about a few things. So my health is really important. I'm more conscious about my health, so I can do what I want to do. I'm not as active as I used to be. I just had my knee replaced 5 weeks ago, and I get excited watching my grandkids grow. And here one of them's going to graduate this year from college. And I'm saying, oh my God, I remember pulling this kid in a little wagon, and it seemed like it was just yesterday. But I have a great time with them, and they bust my chops a lot, But I get the grandkids. Brad, who wants to talk to the adults, And we would just talk and have fun, and they pick my brain, and they get a kick out of watching me in a movie set or something, So as far as what I'm doing now, yes, there are some projects, and people calling me up, for more. So I'm like the independent film champion of some kind, I try to stay away from the mob guys if I can, the mob roles, but I'm still here, and I got a decent reputation, and like I said, I try to be professional, be cordial, and if something happens, it happens. The phone, I'm not going to sit by the phone, but occasionally it'll ring. Hey, Artie, how you doing? I've got a project I'm going to be working on. I think there's a role there for you, whatever. Would you be interested? And I just, yeah, thank you for asking, and you go from there. Yeah. Well, by the way, I expect a book signed by you, one of your books signed by you.
Okay.
So, okay, which one do you have? Look, which one is that?
This is Mahogany Blues. It is the newest one. And I will get one of these out to you, a signed copy. So just text me your address and I'll get that to you.
Is that supposed to be a holiday on there, or Diana Ross?
Okay, so I love that you see this. It is inspired by Diana Ross, the Mahogany and Lady Sings the Blues.
Yeah.
It's kind of a homage, if you will, to...
Yeah, it's a nice cover.
Great Diana Ross. Yes, it is a beautiful cover. Jalen Draper, who is a phenomenal artist in all respects, created this cover, and I love it so much. So it's a piece of artwork in and of itself.
Good for you.